Ahoy! Today is December 9th. The days are ticking by before we celebrate that great mythical fat man, Santa Claus. Alright, so I have just finished the all-important book, Slave Species of the God, or Slave Species of the Gods, whichever version you get, by Michael Tellinger. Preeminent work in collating the theory. The theory is put forth regarding the origins of mankind, and I'll give you a brief synopsis. I'm in no way trying to present this in a way that would be persuasive for you. I believe the work speaks for itself, and if you spent the time and actually read the book, you would have a lot more prescient information than merely the 3-minute recap, because otherwise this is going to sound kind of crazy. But the premise is, right, Earth's existed for X amount of years, and there are already life and hominoids here on the Earth, and a ET civilization, some aliens from a planet that is already in our solar system but has a orbit of 3,600 years. They decide to come visit us because they need gold to fix their atmosphere. Okay, that's the premise of why they came here. They would have arrived here like 400,000 years ago. They do gold exploration on their own. Of course, they don't like doing the work, so they need some workers to do it for them. Sound familiar in everyday life here. So they splice their DNA with the DNA of hominoids already here, which is why we wouldn't actually unearth the missing link. We were literally created from a species that came to visit us. So they form humans. Were pretty dumb in our early creation, and we become their slave species to mine the gold for them that they'll send back home. All right, as time goes on, of course, as we see quarrels in modern, relatively modern human history, so too do issues pop up amongst the leaders, the masters, amongst themselves, and the masters and the slaves. Yada yada yada, turf battles, all those sorts of things. And then where we see great overlap in historical stories and recountings of the flood, whether it was in the Bible or Sumerian texts, etc., whether it was a pole shift or possibly when their planet came back around and upset the balance of everything here on Earth. There was the great catastrophe, and we hear the story, of Noah and the ark, but there's a similar story that has been captured in the Sumerian text. And let me back up. This is being predicated on the texts that were written on the Sumerian clay tablets that would predate the Bible by 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years. And you see all these overlaps and stories in the Bible that are written on these clay tablets. And there was a father figure, Anu, and he had 2 sons, Enlil and Enki, who came down to Earth. And then there you have the Cain and Abel overlap, although there's certainly another version of that embedded in the Sumerian text as well. So you got these 2 brothers trying to sort it out. One's kind of the good, one's kind of the bad, although they both had a part in turning humans into slaves, so they're both kind of bad as far as I'm concerned. The one, just after creating us, decided to try to bestow upon us a higher level of knowledge, whereas the other one wanted to rule with an iron fist. So I'm not going to get much deeper into it than that, except to say, after the flood, where the good brother set aside a group of people, Zayu Sudra might have been the guy's name, which would be Noah, and then after everything got wiped out, the masters, the Anunnaki, that's who this species would be, realized that too many humans were lost and that they needed to work a little more in conjunction with the humans so that they could get the operation back up and running. And that's when we saw the boom of civilization, 8, 9, 10,000 years ago, that seemed to come literally out of thin air with the sciences, agriculture, arts, all these sorts of things scattered around the world, divided by massive oceans, but somehow people are creating similar architecture and agriculture. It's foggy out. out of thin air, whereas previously there was really no indication of that in the records of anything. So after the flood, they're a little bit nicer to us, and then things start to really get out of control, as we see in all the stories of the Old Testament Bible, which is really a recounting of the different gods, meaning the different factions, and how they would treat their people. That's why we see so much bloodshed in the Old Testament. Again, I'm glossing over this very, very quickly because I want to get to the silver lining of all of this. And before anyone says, of course nothing would show up here and splice with DNA, that's horrific and ridiculous sounding. Just look at what we as humans do today with our laboratories and our experiments, what we do to other species, how many we've made go extinct either directly or indirectly, what we do to each other. Just look at the sickos in World War II and the human experiments we do on ourselves to try to push science, understand deeper, etc., other bullshit excuses that lead to suffering without another human's consent to do it, right? It's all about consent and free will. Anyway, so certainly it's possible that a slightly more advanced, at least technologically speaking, advanced group of creatures or beings could come here to tamper with our Earth. Look, we're already trying to go to Mars, and if you had brought that up 500 years ago, which is nothing in terms of time, it's a drop in a bucket, people would have said, that's crazy, we don't even know if that's really possible in any conceptual way, and here we are sending probes out there. So you can't convince me that we can't entertain the idea that something else would come here and tamper with us. In so doing, and I want to bring us to the that statistic that we've heard, that there's a lot of junk DNA kind of just floating around in us. That is the silver lining. That is the belief that we have all this unlocked or potential DNA characteristics, so to speak, that are kind of on pause. They've been hidden from us, and we need only discover our true purpose to unlock this so that we can experience, the utopia that we've been talking about. But we are suppressed and distracted and divided in our actions and in our environment to keep us from exploring that. That would explain why things are transpiring the way that they are, because those in control, the evil ones, so to speak, are very well aware of the potential that we hold, and to keep us from discovering our true capabilities, they want to, stir the pot. That's why we're going through, the greatest psyop ever, which would be the coronavirus, and before that, the biggest false flag we had seen in modern times with 9/11. And that's why they want to censor people putting out alternative information. Let everyone else make their own decision. So I'm going to leave it at that there's this nugget of good news, and I highly recommend going to check out that book. It'll give you a new theory on a long form of history. I've complained about this in the past, how so many people have such a short term length of history. We need to broaden it beyond the year zero for sure, and start to research into the potential of where we really came from beyond the nonsense that they've shoved down our throat regarding the Darwinian side of evolution regarding the human species. Not to say that evolution, if even only looked at in the sense of the progression of a life form to extend its existence, and not even looking at it in the true sense, which would be holistically, in which case I'm not sure humans are evolving or not, but only just to refer to it as like a transfer of genes and the longevity of life. That sort of evolution with minor changes over vast amounts of time, which clearly couldn't have happened in a few 100,000 years. To get us away from buying into that and try to poke and prod a little bit deeper into where we really came from. In so doing, it'll help us better understand who and what we are, so that we can fulfill our potential here on Earth and quit living in this miserable little shit pot. And that's the whole point of all this. So I leave you with that piece of good news on Thursday.